Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're looking at running the Magistus engine in White Forest. A quick note before we get started. This is not going to be a video trying to sell you on running Spenta, on running the Magistus engine in White Forest. It's going to be a pros and cons list because the cards bring a lot, but at the same time, it's not quite as black and white as this is a must-play engine. It gives, it takes. We're going to be looking at both sides of the argument, and you can decide for yourself whether or not you think this package is worth it. I would also say I've held off on making this video until I've played, I can't even remember how many games I've played now, of Magistus White Forest specifically, so I can formulate my thoughts, formulate my feedback based on actual real life games of playing this engine in this deck. Anyway, we're going to start with the pros first, then we'll move on to the cons. So a quick intro for those who don't know on what Magistus engine even is, right? The version I'm currently looking at is 5 cards in the main. So that's 3 Spentas. This is the card you really want to be drawing, basically. 1 Zeroa, the Magistus of Flame. You don't want to draw this guy, but honestly, it's not the end of the world if you do. And then Crowley, the Gifted Magistus. You really don't want to draw this guy. Again, it's not the end of the world if you do, but it gets a bit awkward and you need to be quite familiar with the deck to play around the fact that you've opened this guy. By far and away though, the star of the show is Spenta. This is the card you really want to be opening with. In the extra deck, Magistus Chorozo, the jury's still out, but I'm testing it. What I am sold on for now is 1 Omega. This is to help you bridge into White Forest, starting with Spenta. 1 Verithagna. This is your monster negate, and this is a part of your end board if you're opening with Witch of the White Forest. Witch of the White Forest locks us out of the Azamina package, whereas this way we can start with Witch of the White Forest but still end with a negate on board because this guy's fire rather than dark. Zeroa, the Magistus Conflagrant Calamity, rolls right off the tongue. This has a floodgate effect. Not really something we're using though because we don't have space in the extra deck to make this floodgate relevant. Not only that, even though we could be siding in the extra deck cards to make this floodgate more relevant, we need our side deck for going second because we're already pretty covered going first. And then the surprise package is 2 Artemis. This will raise a few eyebrows, but you will see later on in the video why I'm currently testing and actually quite enjoying 2 Artemis. Anyway, let's move on to the pros of running this engine in White Forest. So we're going to start pro number 1 with the obvious. Spenta is an additional 3 1-card starters into your deck. It's an absolutely crazy strong card, and I will show you what this card can do, even in isolation, just on its own, if it's the only card in your hand. It adds an additional 3 1-card starters to a deck, which historically is regarded as not really having true 1-card combos. Let's move on to pro number 2. Pro number 2 is the fact that Spenta is an absolute ash magnet. It's basically like Branded Fusion. It has a secret effect that says, when you activate this card, your opponent must send a copy of Ash Blossom from their hand to the graveyard. So very often, your opening hand might look something like this, right? Might look something like this. You always start with Spenta. So we start with Spenta, and not once in any of my testing ever did I ever activate Spenta, not get ashed on Spenta, but then get ashed on the White Forest name. They never hold ash. They always ash the Spenta because they know that this card is a pretty much 1-card everything in the game at this point. So they will ash Spenta. Not only then does this enable us to crack on with our White Forest stuff, Spenta has a graveyard effect. So you can banish Spenta from the graveyard, and even after it's been ashed, it's still going to add value, because you can banish it, equip an Artemis. Artemis can then get you the gifted Magistus to fusion summon the monster negate. Not only that, you can also use it as cost for your White Forest names. So as part of your White Forest combo, you can use Spenta to avoid having to send spell cards from your hand to the graveyard. So it's an ash magnet that still provides value even after being ashed. Let me show you why this gets ashed though. Let me show you what one Spenta, and only one Spenta, with no discards, can achieve in White Forest, and then you will understand why pro number 2 is the fact that this card is an absolute ash magnet. So with this, you will understand why Spenta always gets ashed. Pro number 3 is the fact that Spenta, and only Spenta, is a true one-card combo that ends in an FTK, in all but name. This will also give you an indication as to why I actually quite like 2 Artemis, because this isn't the only situation in which 2 Artemis comes up, but it's probably one of the main ones. Let me show you. So we start with Spenta in hand, we send Spenta to the graveyard, and we search Zoroa, the Magistus of Flame. Normal summon, we activate its effect, and we use its effect to equip a copy of Artemis. This now triggers Zoroa, which will special summon Spenta from the graveyard. We're going to Synchro 8 for a copy of the Magistus Synchro. We're going to activate its effect to equip a second copy of Artemis to itself. Now the reason we do this is because normally if you had the one Artemis, you'd be banishing Spenta now in order to equip Artemis to the Zoroa to get yourself the extender, but we're running a second copy of Artemis, which we will equip to Zoroa. Now we'll activate the effect of Artemis to search Crowley, add to hand, special summon Crowley using his effect, on summon trigger effect, to fusion summon the new Magistus Fusion Omega. Don't activate the trigger effect of Omega here. If you're playing on a simulator, don't be ADHD monkey brain clicking, because if you do, and you accidentally activate the effect here, you will have to banish itself, basically. Been there, done that, so be careful. We're going to activate the graveyard effect of the Magistus Synchro to special summon itself back to the field, destroying this in the process. This now triggers in the graveyard to special summon a level 4 spellcaster from deck, which is going to be Sylvie. It will also equip itself to Sylvie, giving Sylvie an attack boost. Doesn't really come up, to be honest. Sylvie's trigger effect is going to get for us a copy of Tails. Now we're going to banish Spenta, and we're going to equip Zoroa specifically with a copy of Artemis. We're going to activate Tales of the White Forest, and we're going to get Elzet. We're going to activate Elzet, sending the Omega to graveyard as cost, special summon itself, and then search the deck for a copy of Elzet as Amina. Synchro 6 to special summon a copy of Recelia. This is why we run the 2 Artemis, because now Recelia can send Artemis to the graveyard as cost to search for us a copy of Witch of the White Forest. Spenta has now become a true 1-card combo, and we didn't need any discards. So now we're going to special summon Elzet as Amina. We're going to go Synchro 8, Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2, get a copy of Deception, and we're going to add Tales of the White Forest back to hand. We'll activate Deception. We're going to send this to the graveyard with Deception. You'll see why. So we send this to the graveyard, And that's going to get for us a copy of Hallowed Azamina. We'll activate Hallowed Azamina, sending Deception to the graveyard. And that's going to summon a copy of Resiliago. On summon trigger effect, it's going to search for Wanted. And now we'll special summon Sylvie by returning Resilia to the extra deck. And we go Synchro 10 for a Light and Dark Chaos Angel. Now Chaos Angel probably isn't as effective as it used to be in the format at the minute, but in this combo it's free, so it just kind of feels like, why not, when you have such a clear opportunity with no downside to make the Light and Dark Chaos Angel. Now what we do is Resiliago back into the extra deck to put Hallowed Azamina back into hand, and we go Hallowed Azamina, Chainlink 2, Wanted, to search for a copy of Dear Bellstar. The chain resolves, and we get a copy of Ilia Sylvia. Now we're going to activate the field spell, because we don't need to worry about being dark locked anymore. Add to hand a copy of Diabel's the White Witch. Activate the effect, sending the field spell to the graveyard to dump a copy of Curse of Diabel, adding to hand Filia Diabel, activate Filia Diabel, searching for a copy of Diabellstar Vengeance. Now special summon Diabellstar, sending Vengeance to the graveyard. Trigger effect to set a copy of Sinful Spoils of Betrayal, which is an additional Omni-Negate. Now we special summon Vengeance from the graveyard, banishing these two. Let's put the rest of the deck back. And finally, we can banish Wanted to put this to the bottom of the deck and get a draw. Now let's not forget, this was a 1-card combo, wasn't it? Which means we'd have 4 other cards in hand. So if you look at this board, we've got 6 cards in hand, and we've made this board. This is absolutely nuts. This is why Spenta is an absolute Ash Magnet, because Spenta, as a true 1-card combo, the only card in hand, can do all of this. But in a real game, if Spenta goes off, and they're on a board breaker type deck, you've done all of this, and you've still got 6 cards in hand. So this is pro number 3. This is why Spenta is so powerful in White Forest, and why it always gets ashed, and why, if it doesn't get ashed, you've probably won the game, to be honest. Pro number 4 is that it lessens the impact of the Dark Lock on the field spell, and it makes the field spell a true 1-card combo. Very often, if you're forced down the route of the field spell, it doesn't feel great. Your end board can feel quite vulnerable because there's no negates there. So doing it this way, we can start with the field spell, and we activate the field spell to get us a copy of Elzet. Activate Elzet, special summon in itself to search for a copy of Sylvie. Normal summon Sylvie. Sylvie grabs a copy of Tails. And without activating, we're going to go Synchro 6 for a copy of Resilia. On summon trigger effect, sends Tails to the graveyard. And we search for Spenta, because this can search any light spellcasters, don't forget. Now Tails resets itself. Activate Tails. We're going to grab Elzet Azamina, special summon it, Synchro 8 into a copy of Diabel. Elzet will search Wanted. Diabel will add Tails back to hand. Now what we can do is special summon Sylvie by returning Resilia to the extra deck. Turn Sylvie into a copy of Artemis. Now we activate Spenta to add to hand a copy of Crowley, who will special summon himself, and then on summon trigger effect to fusion summon into a copy of our monster negate. He will equip a copy. It doesn't really matter which you equip here, to be honest. So now you've got your monster negate. We can carry on playing though, right? Because we can go wanted to search the witch. And not only that, we can banish Spenta from the graveyard to equip an additional Magistus monster. Doesn't really matter which, because now Diabellstar can send that as cost to special summon herself, on summon trigger effect, grabbing a copy of Betrayal. Still got a copy of Tails in hand. This was a 1-card combo, so we'd have an additional 4 cards in hand. And so ideally, this is the kind of combo you'd do when you've opened a copy of the field spell. You haven't opened any of your other White Forest names, but you did open access to White Witch and Vengeance, because then you can do the White Witch and the Vengeance line on top of this. And then imagine now, you've started with the field spell, which normally means a much weaker end board, but instead, you've started with the field spell, and you've still got 2 negates on field. You've still managed to build this board. You've still got 5 cards in hand, and traditionally the field spell was our worst starter. You never normally wanted to start with the field spell, but because this is a fire, it doesn't really matter, to be honest, that we've locked ourselves out of dark. Anyway, that's pro number 4. Let's pretend we wrapped up the video here. We could title the video, Magistus Engine in White Forest, most broken engine ever printed. And if we only focus on what's good about this engine, we could certainly make that claim, right? We could make this engine look completely broken, there's no downsides, hallelujah. Except there are downsides, and while I would say there's more pros than there are cons, I would say the cons are quite weighty, that they are significant downsides, and so they are a consideration. The first real major downside is the cost to the extra deck of this package. Even running a more minimal package, you'd be looking at 4 cards in the extra deck. Now, I'm running 2 Artemis for reasons which you will understand now. If we want to run Magistus Chirozzo, because if we draw the Zeroa, the normal summon Zeroa in our hand, Chirozzo helps to lessen the impact of hard drawing the Zeroa. So now all of a sudden, we could be running up to 6 Magistus cards in the extra deck. There's other Magistus cards as well, right? I'm not looking at those, that's probably a separate video. That doesn't need to happen because, in all honesty, there just isn't the room. So if we consider the White Forest extra deck was already a bit tight, right? By including this, sacrifices need to be made elsewhere in the extra deck. Are we now going to run a smaller Azamina package? Are we now going to drop Chaos Angel? Are we now going to have the Poplar and the Snake Eyes Vengeance Dragon removed from the extra deck? But if we do that, that's taking away powerful interactions for our opponent's turn. There unfortunately isn't a way to fit this in without making sacrifices elsewhere in the extra deck, and that is a significant downside to running this package. Let's move on to downside number 2. Con number 2. White Forest is one of those decks which, if you've played it, you understand that depending on how you've made the deck, it does have quite a lot of cards in it that you don't really want to be hard drawing, you don't really want to be opening. They're not necessarily bricks, but you really don't want to see them in your opening hand. Because Zeroa requires your normal summon, it does kind of necessitate Rusia in your deck. I actually quite like Rusia for what it's worth. I know a lot of people cut Rusia from lists, but I've won far more games from having Rusia as an extender then I've lost from having Rusia in hand, if that makes sense. Sylvie, as your only level 4 tuner, sometimes you just need that Rusia to be able to special summon it. Anyway, this video is not about Rusia. The point I'm making is that the deck as a whole already has no shortage of soft garnets. They're not really bricks, they're probably not really garnets as such, but at the same time, you really don't want to be drawing them. So then what happens is, we introduce the Magistus engine, and yeah, Spenta is an absolutely bonkers card, right? So we're adding 3 really nice, high quality 1-card starters that can extend even from beyond the grave if interrupted. But to go along with that, we're also adding a, call it soft 0.5 garnet, right? It's not the end of the world, but not ideal. And then we're adding a hard garnet in this guy. You really, really don't want to draw this guy. And now, because we've got these guys in the deck, we're kind of having to run this. All of a sudden now, Sinful Spoils of the White Forest, the quick play spell, we're probably looking at running that in our deck as well, because it can allow us to extend. So now we're adding yet another kind of garnet to the deck in order to facilitate this package. And my concern is, over the course of 12 rounds of Swiss, 14 rounds of Swiss, how often are we going to draw the awkward, janky opening hands that White Forest is, if we're being honest, quite synonymous with, right? It can be a deck that is an FTK deck in all but name, but then equally sometimes you get these really weird hands where you've only got 1 true starter in your hand, or worse, none, right? No true starters in your hand, and you're just scooping on the spot, and it doesn't feel great in those moments. So even though there's 4 really good reasons to be including this package in your deck, there's 2 really good reasons to not be running the package in your deck. So as I said at the very beginning of the video, this isn't about trying to sell you on the Magistus package in the White Forest deck. It has its pros, and in isolation, they can make the package look absolutely broken. But then equally, there's the other side of the coin, in which if you're hard drawing any of these guys, along with, a deck that already has no shortage of cards you don't really want to be opening, are we just asking for trouble over the course of a longer event? Anyway, that's con number 2. I don't think this can be understated either as a consideration. I think it's quite important to consider this as part of a longer tournament run. Let's wrap up the video. So in summary, Spenta is clearly an incredibly high quality card. It's a 1-card starter. Even if you hand trap it, it still starts facilitating combos anyway, right? Absolutely ridiculous piece of cardboard. However, there are also serious downsides to including this in your deck. On one hand, it adds consistency by adding 3 really powerful 1-card starters that help you play through interruptions. But then on the flip side, it simultaneously makes your deck less consistent while also making it more consistent at the same time. It's weird, to be honest. The big question mark I've got for now, though, is do the pros outweigh the cons? In my testing for now, I'm probably leaning towards yes, but if I take this to a regional and open a few bad hands in a row, that might well change my mind. I think it's probably the kind of package that over the course of a longer event, the downsides of the deck are more likely to show themselves, if that makes sense. One thing I did forget to mention though, is that if you're ever going second, siding out the 5-card package, 3 Spenta, 1 Zeroa, 1 Crowley, you just side out those 5 cards for board breakers. So that's quite nice, to be honest. Being able to just outright side out that package does feel pretty nice, admittedly. But I think all things considered, the jury's still out for now as far as the competitive viability, right? Think 12, 14 rounds of Swiss. What does that look like with this deck? Do the pros outweigh the cons, right? Does the good stuff that I've showed you outweigh the fact that you are going to be opening some awkward hands occasionally? I'd love to hear from you, to be honest. Like I said, this is a discussion. I'm not here trying to sell you one way or the other. Give the pros, give the cons, and ask the good people of YouTube, that's you by the way, what do you think? Would love to see you in the comments. Let me know. Thanks for watching.